President Trump visited Capitol Hill Tuesday to rally support for its tax bill. According to the White House, he's made it clear he's losing patience with holdout factions within the Republican Party that threaten to delay the bill's passage. Our next guest argues the plan prioritizes politics over economic growth, a trade-off that could mean more uncertainty for Americans in the year ahead. Here to explain is Daniel Bunn, President and CEO of the Tax Foundation. And Daniel, perfect voice to have here. There's a lot of focus on this bill, and I want to start on your politics over growth argument. What's the most glaring example of that within this legislation, and why does that concern you?
Thank you so much for having me. The policies that I would point to are, on the one hand, where we see a lot of political effort, the exemptions for tips, overtime, this new deduction for seniors, deduction for auto loan interest, things that really complicate the tax code and don't necessarily deliver broad-based benefits. In fact, they are designed to be very narrow benefits. And the opposite side, where I see them not providing significant economic growth, is in the temporary nature of a lot of the business investment provisions, the things like full expensing for research and development, CapEx, and things that we think would spur the economy much more effectively than temporary things that do contribute to some of that uncertainty.
Yeah, why is temporary policymaking so problematic from a fiscal perspective, economic perspective, and even when we think about business confidence?
So it really gets to the point of where a boardroom might be thinking about making a next investment and thinking through the long-term profitability of that investment. And certainty in the tax code can help those conversations move forward. In fact, when we look at the provisions that are in the tax bill, if they were made permanent, the growth impact of the tax bill would more than double over the long term. It would go from about 0.6 impact on GDP to 1.6 over the long term. And that's really a material difference, especially when you think of the impact on growth and in the context of the tariff uncertainty that has really hurt markets and hurt business investment decisions. It's really important for Congress to weigh in the direction of creating more certainty here.
I want to dig deeper into the SALT cap debate. You say the expanded SALT deduction cap is a reversal of good tax policy. Why do you believe restoring a higher SALT cap is a step backwards, and who actually benefits the most from this change?
The folks who benefit the most are very high income taxpayers with very high property tax bills and state income tax bills. And it's a very narrow slice of the population. In fact, what the choice policymakers took in 2017 was the right one. Prior to 2017, a lot of these taxpayers who are currently arguing for a larger SALT deduction saw much fewer deductions available to them because they were stuck with the alternative minimum tax. The 2017 law took away a lot of the hurt of the alternative minimum tax and made the tax law more transparent with this $10,000 SALT cap. So going back on that with a higher SALT cap or by bringing more complicated measures in on itemized deductions would actually be a reversal of the good policies that we saw. In fact, lawmakers should lean more into that broader base, lower rate mentality. And right now, it's just a lot of politics around what narrow slices of the population can get some added benefits out of this legislation.
So the bill heads to the Senate next. What specific changes would you like to see from Senate Republicans to restore what you call true fiscal responsibility and some of those growth priorities?
There's two things that I'd like to see. Number one, I would like to see permanence on the pro-growth elements. And number two, I would like to see base broadeners both on the business side and on the individual side. I think there's more room for lawmakers to go on some of the energy provisions from the Inflation Reduction Act. And on the individual side, there's this new limit on the value of itemized deductions that I would like to see ramped up a little bit more to create a little more wiggle room from the budget perspective. And honestly, the lawmakers really need to be serious about the spending cuts they're interested in order to calm some of these markets. Like we were just seeing on your screen, some of the treasury yields moving up into risky territory. Lawmakers really need to be serious about fiscal responsibility to address those concerns.
Yeah, and given where we're at in that economic cycle, inflation's still sticky, debt levels high, how urgent is it that Congress gets this right, and what are the risks if they don't?
The urgency is higher than it's been in recent years for certain. The challenge for lawmakers is that they're not necessarily facing a true crisis moment. Certainly, yields are going higher. There's some concerns about long-term debt and deficits. But the real crisis that I think we're moving towards, if we don't start getting things right now, is in the early 2030s when some of the trust funds that fund the long-term entitlement programs would expire and benefits might have to be cut. And that's a real crisis moment, I think, where Congress would really have to make some very tough decisions, but they could help themselves now by making this bill more fiscally responsible, more pro-growth, and being able to have a more sustainable position as we get closer to some of those harder choices down the road.
A lot riding on this bill. Daniel Bunn, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.